A bear sits outside a woman's house for days. When she opens the door, the truth is unbelievable. Emma Hawke had never been one to be afraid of the wilderness. She had spent most of her life in the small town of Windwood Hollow, nestled at the base of the rugged Birchwood Mountains, where the dense forest stretched out like a labyrinth and the wildlife roamed freely. For the past few days, Emma had been noticing something strange from her window. A large, hulking shape sitting just beyond her porch. She had first caught sight of it early one morning, just as the sun was rising. At first, she thought it might be a trick of the light or a large rock, but when she peered closer, her heart skipped a beat. A bear. A massive one, its coat dark, as night sitting motionless on the edge of her property. Emma froze, staring at the animal from behind the glass. It didn't move, not at all. It was as if it had decided that her home was its destination, and nothing would make it leave. At first, Emma thought it was an odd occurrence, maybe just a brief stopover before the bear wandered back into the forest. But the next day, it was there again, and the day after that. Each time it stayed in the same spot just beyond the porch as if waiting for something, or someone. The woods around Windwood Hollow were home to plenty of bears, but Emma had never seen one linger in front of her house for so long. She tried to tell herself that it was just looking for food, maybe a stray piece of garbage or something to scavenge, but the bear wasn't moving. It just sat there, watching her house, watching her. By the third day, Emma had grown used to seeing it, though unease still gnawed at her. Her friends in town had warned her to be cautious about the bears in the area, but this one was different. It didn't act like the others. It didn't seem interested in the trash cans she had carefully tucked behind her fence or the garden where she grew her vegetables. It wasn't even concerned with the other sounds of the woods. It just sat. At night, Emma locked her doors and windows, the image of the bear's watchful eyes never leaving her mind. But still, it remained, silent, waiting. By the fourth day, Emma had become so accustomed to the sight of the bear that it no longer startled her. She would sit by the window, her eyes drifting to the dark shape that loomed just beyond the porch, and she would often find herself wondering what the animal was thinking. Why was it here? Why hadn't it moved on like all the others? It was late afternoon when Emma first saw the bear stand up. Her heart raced, a rush of tension flooding her chest as the bear stretched its limbs, revealing the full scope of its massive frame. It was even bigger than she had initially thought. The bear stood tall on its hind legs for a moment, scanning the area as if searching for something. Then, just as quietly as it had risen, it sank back onto its haunches, resuming its unwavering watch. Emma couldn't help herself. She grabbed her coat and stepped out onto the porch. The cold air hit her instantly, sharp and biting, but she barely noticed it as she walked closer to the bear, her feet crunching softly on the frost-covered ground. The bear didn't move. It didn't react to her presence, even as she stood at the edge of the porch watching it closely. There was no growl, no shift in its posture. It didn't seem afraid of her. It seemed almost calm. "Hey there," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible, more out of curiosity than anything else. The words felt strange in the cold air, and she immediately regretted speaking. What was she doing? But the bear didn't flinch. It just stared ahead, its large amber eyes reflecting the fading light of the evening. Emma felt a strange sensation creeping into her chest, something that went beyond fear or confusion. There was a kind of quiet intelligence in the way the bear sat, unmoving, as though it understood something she didn't. She had seen wild animals in her time, deer, raccoons, even the occasional fox. But this was different. This wasn't just an animal wandering through the woods. This was an animal that had made a choice to stay, a choice to watch. As she continued to stand there, barely able to breathe, Emma noticed a strange detail that she had missed before. On the bear's face, near its left ear, there was a small mark, a scar, faded but visible. It looked like a human-made wound, perhaps from a bullet or some kind of trap. Emma's pulse quickened as she realized what it meant. This bear had been hurt, it had suffered, But it wasn't here to cause trouble. It wasn't hunting her, nor was it after her food or her home. It was just waiting. Suddenly, Emma's mind shifted. The tension she had felt earlier melted into a strange feeling of compassion. This wasn't a threat. This was a creature that had survived against all odds, and now it was waiting for something, or someone. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. "What are you waiting for?" she asked aloud, though she knew there would be no answer, and for the first time she realized something truly bizarre. The bear had not come to harm her. It had come for something much more unbelievable. As the days passed, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the bear's presence than she could understand. She had always respected the animals around her, but this felt different. The bear didn't act like any of the others she had encountered. It wasn't afraid, it wasn't hungry, and it certainly wasn't just roaming the forest. It was as if it had come to find something, or someone. On the 6th day, Emma found herself standing at the door of her cabin, staring at the bear as it sat patiently outside. The air was colder now, and the sun had begun to set early, casting long, slanted shadows across the ground. For the first time in days, the bear stood up again, but this time it didn't retreat into the forest. It simply moved toward her cabin, its massive paws barely making a sound on the soft earth. Her heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know why, but something told her this was the moment she had been waiting for. The bear was getting closer, and Emma couldn't bring herself to back away. In fact, she stepped out onto the porch, her breath visible in the air, and stood her ground. The bear stopped just a few feet from her, its amber eyes watching her with an intensity that almost felt human. Emma held her breath, unsure of what would happen next. She had heard stories of bears approaching cabins, of them being curious or even desperate for food, but this was different. The bear wasn't moving in any way that indicated aggression. It wasn't circling her, and it wasn't growling. It was simply waiting, and it was watching her as though it had been waiting for her to do something. For a long moment, nothing happened. Emma's heart beat louder in her ears, and she found herself feeling a mix of fear and awe. She was close enough to see the scar on the bear's face more clearly now, the jagged line across its cheek. The sight only deepened her confusion. Was this bear injured? Had it been seeking help all along? Without thinking, Emma slowly took a step toward it, reaching out her hand just slightly, as though inviting it closer. The bear didn't move at first, but then to her amazement it lowered its head slightly, sniffing the air as if recognizing the gesture. Emma's hand trembled as she pulled it back, unsure of how to interpret the animal's reaction. She had lived in these woods long enough to know that wild animals didn't often approach humans with such calmness, especially not bears. Just as she was about to retreat back into her cabin, something incredible happened. The bear took one more step forward and let out a low, almost mournful sound. It wasn't a growl, not a roar, but a soft, guttural noise that resonated deeply in Emma's chest. And then, to her shock, it sat down on the ground, its eyes still, fixed on hers, as if waiting for her to understand. The realization hit Emma like a freight train. This bear wasn't just waiting for food or shelter. It had come for something else, something much more personal. As the seconds ticked by, the connection between them deepened, and Emma felt a weight settle in her heart. This bear, this incredible creature, wasn't just another wild animal. It was asking for help, just as it had done all those days before, but not with its claws or its teeth. It was asking with its presence, its silent plea. Emma took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she understood the truth. She wasn't just its watcher. She was the one it had been waiting for all along. Emma's mind raced as she stood there, staring at the bear. The realization hit her hard. This animal wasn't here by accident. It wasn't just roaming, looking for food, or passing through. No, this bear had come specifically to her, and as unbelievable as it seemed, Emma was starting to piece together the impossible truth. It wasn't just about the bear's scar, the way it had been lingering outside her house for days. It was the look in its eyes, the quiet desperation in its movements, the way it had stayed, patient, waiting, as though it knew she would eventually step outside and face it. But why her? Why had it chosen her of all the people in the forest? The soft growl the bear emitted seemed almost like a word, a sentence left unsaid, a plea for something that Emma wasn't sure she fully understood. It was a sound full of yearning, of something deeper than hunger or pain. The bear was trying to communicate, but how could she possibly know what it meant? She had no training in animal behavior, no idea how to interpret its actions beyond the obvious. Then it dawned on her. The bear wasn't just sitting outside her house because it was hungry, lost, or seeking shelter. It was seeking comfort, something that had been stripped from it. The scar on its face, the pain it must have suffered, all of it pointed to one thing. This wasn't just a wild animal wandering the woods. This was an animal that had been hurt by human hands. Emma's heart sank as she considered the implications. This bear had been shot or trapped. It had been left to suffer. And now here it was out to not seeking revenge, but looking for something more precious. Empathy. A connection. The thought shook her to her core. In a world where humans often took from nature, where animals were treated as obstacles or commodities, this bear was showing her a different side. One where, despite the cruelty it had faced, it was still reaching out. Not with aggression, but with trust. It had chosen her, perhaps because it sensed that she wouldn't harm it, that she might be the one person who could offer it something it needed more than food. Slowly, Emma lowered herself onto the porch steps, her voice soft but steady. "I won't hurt you," she whispered, unsure if the bear could even understand her words. She hoped deep down that it could hear the truth in her voice. The bear's eyes met hers, and for a brief, powerful moment, it seemed like the entire world stood still. It was as if time had frozen, the wind holding its breath. The bear let out another low, deep sound. Its body relaxed for the first time in days. It wasn't an invitation, but it wasn't a rejection either. Emma knew this was the closest they could come to understanding each other. She stood, stepping back into the cabin slowly, not turning her back on the bear. She moved toward the kitchen and grabbed a bowl, filled it with water, and placed it outside the door. She didn't know if the bear would drink from it. She didn't know if this would be enough. But she had to try. She had to do something to show the bear that, for once, it didn't have to fight. It didn't have to face the world alone. She stepped back, her hand trembling as she reached for the door. "I'll leave this for you," she whispered. "Whatever you need, I'll do what I can." The bear watched her as she closed the door, its gaze never leaving her. For the next few days, Emma kept the bowl of water outside her door, refilling it every morning. Each time she returned to check, the water level would be slightly lower. At first, she wasn't sure if it was the bear or something else. Perhaps the local deer or other animals had found it. But then, on the fourth morning, she saw something that left her breathless. The bowl was completely empty, but this time, there was something else. A small pile of berries carefully placed beside the bowl. They were wild berries, the kind that grew along the edges of the forest, rich in color and sweet with the earth's untouched taste. Emma knelt down, a sense of awe creeping into her chest. There were no signs of humans nearby. This could only mean one thing. The bear had brought them. For the first time, Emma understood. The bear wasn't just taking what it needed to survive. It wasn't there to demand anything from her. No, it was giving back. It was offering her a gift, one that could only come from an animal who had been forced to trust and, in turn, had found a way to trust again. Her heart swelled with emotion. She knew she had to do something in return. But what? What could she possibly offer that would match the weight of such an unspoken bond? The answer came to her later that afternoon. The bear had been through pain. It had survived despite everything that had happened to it. It had shown her the rawness of nature, not just its strength, but its ability to heal and forgive. And now, Emma realized, she had the same choice. She could continue to close herself, off, keep her distance, or she could step into the trust the bear had extended to her. That evening, she sat on her porch, the bowl of water placed carefully in front of her, and waited. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, and the air was thick with the peaceful quiet that only the wilderness could offer. She didn't have to wait long. From the shadows of the trees, the bear emerged, its large form a silhouette against the twilight. It moved slowly, deliberately, and then paused just beyond the porch, watching her with those deep amber eyes. Emma didn't move. She simply sat there, watching, waiting, knowing that this moment, this silent, gentle exchange, was more than just an encounter between human and animal. It was a moment of mutual understanding. The bear stepped closer, and this time it didn't hesitate. It drank from the bowl, slowly, almost reverently, as if savoring the moment. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. The wild, fierce creature she had once feared was now sitting beside her, partaking in the same simple act of trust she had offered. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the soft rustling of the trees and the distant call of an owl. And in that stillness, Emma realized that she had experienced something rare, something that most people would never believe. The ability to forge a connection with a creature of the wild, to offer help, and to receive it in return, not with words, but with trust. As the bear finished drinking, it lifted its head and looked at her one final time. Its amber eyes, full of quiet recognition, seemed to say everything. Without a sound, it turned and disappeared back into the forest, its form blending with the shadows as it moved deeper into the wilderness. Emma sat in silence for a long while, the weight of the moment settling into her bones. The bear had come to her door not for food, not for shelter, but for something far more important. It had come for kindness. And in that simple act of kindness, Emma had found something she hadn't realized she was missing. A reminder that even in the heart of the wild, trust could bloom in the most unexpected places.